gave him to God.
You gave him to God today?
Yes.
What do you mean by that?
I threw him in the lake, and I gave him to God. And people are going to tell me I am crazy, but he is real, and he loves you. He really does love you.
The woman speaking to deputies was 40-year-old Ruth Miller, and when this footage was recorded, officers at Atwood Lake in Ohio were still trying to understand who she meant when she said she had given someone to God. The answer would lead them to two missing members of the same family. It was August 23, 2025, and Ruth had been camping near the lake with her husband, Marcus, and their 4 children. By the time deputies arrived, her 3 older children had escaped from a golf cart that Ruth had driven into the water, while her 4-year-old son, Vincent, and her husband were both missing. Ruth's answers only made the situation more confusing. She spoke about God, the end of the world, and claimed her husband had been swallowed by a fish at the bottom of the lake. Then, she told deputies what had happened to Vincent. Ruth said she had taken her son toward the water earlier that morning and thrown him into the lake because she believed God had asked for him. But the events at Atwood Lake had not begun with Vincent. They had started several hours earlier with a series of what Ruth and Marcus believed were tests of their faith. According to the investigation, Ruth and Marcus went to the dock shortly after 1 a.m. and began performing swimming exercises that they believed God had instructed them to complete. After returning to the campsite, Marcus apparently believed he had failed the test because his faith had not been strong enough, so he went back to the lake alone and attempted to swim toward a distant sandbar. Marcus was not a strong swimmer, and he never returned. At the time Ruth later took Vincent toward the dock, she did not yet know for certain that Marcus had drowned, but she believed another sacrifice was now required because the earlier tests had failed. The beliefs captured on body cam had also not appeared without warning. In the weeks before the lake trip, Ruth had reportedly been sleeping erratically and interpreting religious passages as direct messages meant specifically for her family. 2 days before the deaths, relatives and the family's bishop confronted Ruth and Marcus because they believed the couple's ideas about faith and the end times had gone too far. Despite those concerns, the family continued with the planned camping trip. Ruth's statements on body cam gave deputies enough information to begin searching the area around the dock, and Vincent's body was located later that evening.
Ma'am, can you explain to me what happened? Who'd you throw in the water?
I gave my son to God.
Your son?
Yes.
Where's your husband?
He went for a walk this morning.
And you haven't seen him
He
since?
didn't ever come back. And we went to the boat and his clothes were there. And God told me he's in the lake and a fish swallowed him. And you're actually supposed to go look for him in the bottom of the lake. And you will find the fish. And you will find my husband. And then you will believe. But ye of little faith that did not believe before seeing.
Okay.
So send people down to the bottom of the lake looking for a fish. I have my husband.
How old's your son that's in the lake?
4. He's sweet.
Marcus was found the following morning, roughly 53 yards from the dock, and his death was ruled an accidental drowning. The 3 older children, twin 18-year-old sons and their 15-year-old sister, had survived after escaping from the golf cart Ruth drove into the lake. Ruth was charged with 7 counts, including aggravated murder, felonious assault, child endangerment, and domestic violence. But as the case moved toward trial, 3 separate mental health professionals reached the same conclusion. At the time of the incident, Ruth was suffering from a severe mental disease that left her unable to understand that what she was doing was wrong. The prosecution did not dispute those findings. In March 2026, a judge found Ruth not guilty by reason of insanity on every charge and ordered her committed to a secure psychiatric facility under continuing court supervision.
The defendant, at the time of the offense charge, again, has a severe mental disease, but did not have a severe mental defect.
When you have a unanimous decision that the defendant did not understand the wrongfulness of her conduct, was in a psychotic state, the decision kind of writes itself.
She is mortified by the fact that she was involved in that situation on August 23, 2025. And had she been receiving the care that was necessary at that time, none of us would be standing here.
Ruth remains under secure psychiatric treatment, while the 3 surviving children were placed with extended family after losing their father and younger brother during the same morning.
No. Go away. No.
The woman in that video was not on a trail deep in the wilderness, and she was not looking at the bear from a safe distance. She was standing on a gravel road near Mount Engadine Lodge in Alberta, holding a leash in one hand and her phone in the other, while a grizzly bear kept circling closer to her dog. The footage was recorded early on the morning of June 24th, 2026, when 29-year-old Jessie Oakes had stepped out for what was supposed to be a very short walk with her Dutch shepherd, Skokie. She was staying at a wilderness camp in Kananaskis country, and according to her later account, she had only gone out briefly because Skokie's paws were sore. That is what makes the video so unsettling. This was not a long hike, and it was not a planned backcountry trip. It was a quick walk near camp that turned into a close encounter almost immediately.
Hey, no! Hey! No! No! Hey! Hey! Stop it! Stop! Stop! Enough! No! Hey! Hey! Stop! Stop it! Go away! Go! Enough! Hey!
At around 6 a.m., Jessie and Skokie were on the gravel road near camp when a grizzly bear suddenly appeared nearby. At first, that alone would have been enough to make anyone stop, but the problem was not just that the bear was there, it was how it behaved once it noticed the dog. Instead of moving off, the bear stayed focused on Skokie, circled the pair, and kept coming back in closer. You can hear Jessie trying to control the situation by speaking firmly to the bear, telling it to stop, go away, and back off. And what the footage shows is not one quick bluff charge and then an exit. According to Jessie, the bear made repeated approaches, came within about a meter of them, and even reared up on its hind legs several times while staying focused on the dog. She did not have bear spray with her. What she did have was a leash, a coffee mug, and a very short distance between herself and camp. Jessie kept backing away and trying to keep Skokie close, while the bear continued following. At that point, she needed something to interrupt the bear's attention long enough to get away. So she threw her coffee mug down the road. The bear stopped to investigate it, and that gave her just enough time to run back toward camp. But even then, it was not over. Jessie later said the bear briefly followed as she ran, and the only reason she and Skokie made it all the way back was because people at the camp started yelling and waving their arms, which distracted the animal long enough for her to get inside a tent. She stayed there for around 15 minutes until the bear finally lost interest and moved away. Luckily, no one was injured. After the encounter, Alberta Forestry and Parks issued a public bear warning for the Mount Engadine Lodge area, Mount Shark Road, and Rummel Lake Trail. Officials warned people in the area because the bear had shown unusually bold behavior, especially around a leashed dog. The video spread quickly online, partly because the entire thing feels like it should have gone worse than it did.
Okay, they're coming as fast as they can. Is she awake? Okay, ma'am, is she awake?
She's on the phone. Okay. She's awake, she's awake.
Okay. Is she breathing?
I'm watching for the gator. Yes, she's breathing. I'm watching for the gator right now.
The person calling for help was standing beside the Econlockhatchee River in central Florida, where 31-year-old Brittany Clark had just been pulled from the water after an attack that lasted only seconds. By the time police arrived, the animal was gone, but the injuries it left behind were so severe that the first deputy running toward the riverbank immediately began calling for a tourniquet.
Where are we?
It's that.
The body cam begins after the attack is already over, so it does not show how Brittany ended up on that riverbank, or how the people with her managed to get her out of the water. To understand that, you have to go back several minutes. Earlier that afternoon, Brittany had been hiking near the Bar Street trailhead with her boyfriend, Chance Allison, and her best friend, Jaden Hernandez. The group eventually left the main trail and stopped beside a section of the river where Brittany had apparently swum before. The water was shallow and murky, and according to accounts accounts given afterward, they noticed bubbles nearby but could not see what was beneath the surface. Then, a large alligator grabbed Brittany by the arm. The animal pulled her underwater and began rolling, but Chance immediately went after her, grabbing the alligator and trying to force it to release. For a moment, it worked. The alligator let go, only to grab Brittany's other arm and drag them back beneath the water. Chance continued fighting until he was able to pull Brittany toward the bank, where the animal finally released her. Once they reached the shore, he began CPR, while Jaden tried to guide emergency responders to their location. That is the moment captured in the 911 audio. The caller can be heard pleading for responders to hurry while trying to describe injuries that were difficult to put into words. When deputies finally reached the group, Brittany still had a weak pulse. Responders applied emergency treatment and transported her as a trauma patient, but the blood loss was too severe, and she died while being taken to the hospital. Florida wildlife officers searched the river and captured 2 large alligators from the surrounding area, one measuring roughly 13 feet and another found about half a mile away. Both animals were euthanized, so investigators could compare bite patterns and collect samples. Preliminary medical findings later indicated that Brittany's wounds were consistent with one of the captured alligators, although the full investigation and laboratory analysis were still being completed. However, officials found no evidence that Brittany or the others had provoked the animal before the attack. Brittany worked in construction as a bulldozer operator and was remembered by those close to her as strong, outgoing, and someone who genuinely loved being outdoors. Chance had managed to pull her away from an alligator large enough to drag both of them underwater, but the damage had already been done. During one of Brittany's final conscious moments, she reportedly asked him to take care of her dog, Hokie. The camera captured only a few seconds, but those flashes were not fireworks left over from the July 4th celebrations. They were gunshots being fired into a lime green Lamborghini Urus as it passed through a residential neighborhood in Miramar, Florida. By the time the vehicle disappeared from view, 3 people inside had already been hit. Only a short portion of the emergency audio has been released, and much of it is difficult to make out, but the shouting captures the confusion after the shooting.
I don't know. We're trying to look at the police. Police.
Repeat that one more time.
Oh,
Bam. Bam. Okay.
I can't do this. I can't. I don't know. Just come to the address, please.
They are going to be on the way, but we need to know how the subject looks.
Do this. I can't.
Bam. Calm down.
A few moments later, the Lamborghini ran through a stop sign and crashed into a nearby home. The shooting happened at around 5:30 on the morning of July 5th, 2026. Inside the Lamborghini were 21-year-old Brianna Johnson, her cousin Arthur Lee Johnson III, and a childhood friend whose name was not publicly released. Brianna was known online as Dream Doll Bree, where she had built a large following through fashion, music, and lifestyle content. Arthur had grown up alongside her, and relatives later described the 2 cousins as being raised more like siblings. Earlier that night, the group had attended a mansion party, visited a nightclub, and stopped at several gas stations during the holiday weekend. Investigators later began reviewing each of those locations because they believed something from earlier in the evening may have followed the group into Miramar. What the surveillance video made clear was that this did not appear to be random. The white sedan moved alongside the Lamborghini, and more than a dozen rounds were fired toward the driver's side before it sped away. Miramar police were alerted by ShotSpotter and arrived to find all 3 occupants suffering from gunshot wounds. Brianna was taken to the hospital but died later that day. Arthur initially survived, but 3 days later, on July 8th, he also died from his injuries. Their friend had been shot in the face and jaw, but after treatment and having his jaw wired shut, he was eventually released from the hospital. In the days that followed, Brianna and Arthur's family pushed back against rumors that the cousins had been involved in gangs or street activity. Their relatives said they were not troublemakers and described them as 2 young people who had grown up together, attended school together, together and were still supporting each other's plans. Arthur had hoped to launch a clothing line, while Brianna had been using her growing platform to help promote it. However, police described the shooting as a deliberate attack on the Lamborghini rather than a random act of violence, but they had not publicly confirmed what caused the group to be targeted. Detectives continued reviewing surveillance footage and investigating whether an earlier dispute at the party, nightclub, or one of the gas stations had led to the ambush. As of the latest available reports, no arrests had been announced, and the reason Brianna Johnson, Arthur Johnson, and their friend were targeted remained unknown. If you stayed till here, thank you so much. If you have any suggestions or a case you want me to cover next, just drop it in the comments.